Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 18th of July, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information no matter what part of Alaska you're in, and we give you several different ways to make that possible. On the phone, 1-800-472-0391. We hope we have that saved in your favorites for you there, and you can get to that whenever you need. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. If you're away from cell service and you don't have a good data connection anyway, that's a really good number to use. And of course, if you have a landline, it should work just great. If you do have some data service on your cell phone, make sure you're using weather.gov/Alaska. That's a really good site for a desktop computer if you're connected to broadband or satellite service. But here's another way that might save you a little bit of data next time and should load faster if you're in a slower connection, and that's mobile.weather.gov, mobile.weather.gov. And at that point, when you load that up, you should have a search bar at the top. Simply type in your village or your location, maybe even your zip code. Sometimes that doesn't work quite so well as the village name itself. And then save the results of that forecast page on your home screen, and you can get back to it really quick. It loads a whole lot faster than that big web page does on your phone. David.Snider@NOAA.gov is a great way to find me. If you have, I don't know, let's say some pictures of a funnel cloud or tornado in Kotzebue from this weekend, I'd love to see it. Let me know. Send me a picture there or connect with me on Facebook, and I'd be happy to share that with other folks here on Alaska Weather. Anytime you have a cool weather photo around Alaska or from your village, I'd love to see that. So please send that my way. In the meantime, we are watching very carefully the Mendenhall Glacier, Suicide Basin area. It has a glacial dam, and water has been pooling up behind it. We're expecting that that is going to release here in the very near future. So a flood watch is posted for the Mendenhall River there, as we expect that to release at some point. And the levels from that will probably be over flood stage. So make sure that if that is in effect affecting your area around the Juneau region, make sure you're paying attention to the Juneau Weather Forecast Office and the Alaska River Forecast Center. That's Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center will have the latest predictions on that. The second it releases, we certainly want to let everybody know. So make sure that you have a way to monitor that if that is going to affect you when that goes, just like it has in previous years. Now, as we look up north, we can still see high surf advisories stretching all the way from Wainwright down through Point Hope, down to Kotzebue, and around Cape Krusenstern. The high surf conditions should be easing at this point this afternoon, and conditions should continue to improve as we head into the overnight hours. We're also watching some strong winds up around the Barrow region to Prudhoe Bay. Winds there sustained anywhere from 40 to maybe 50 miles per hour at times, and that strong wind is creating some pretty rough conditions as well. However, it's also brought in a lot of warmth, and earlier this afternoon, Kaktovik, Barter Island's weather station, made it up to 69 degrees before some cooler weather set in. And while that is not the hottest temperature in the state today, it's pushing it. Earlier today, McGrath made it up to about 72 degrees. The Middle Tanana Valley was nearing 70 degrees in many locations late this afternoon. It's interesting that only a handful of times has the Barter Island weather station, before the station was shut down, the Weather Service Office anyway, shut down in 1989, I believe. Only a handful of times did it make it above that 70-degree mark. So 69 degrees today, it's pretty warm stuff. Hopefully you made it through out there. Here's a look at the fire danger now across the region. The good news is most areas around the interior of Alaska have seen improving fire conditions there, and we're not expecting any widespread thunderstorm activity across the region today or tomorrow. There might be a chance as we get into the weekend for a few isolated shower or storm clouds to bubble up there, but right now things are still a little bit on the dry side, but not as bad as they have been earlier in the season. And overall conditions have been improving across the area. So good news there. You can check the latest fire weather indices and ways that we map this out at fire.ak.blm.gov. Here's the visible satellite picture, and I'll show this to you. There's nothing on it right here. That's because it's dark now at 5 o'clock Alaska time, and dark enough anyway that we're not seeing the effects of the visible satellite picture. So we're quickly losing daylight once again, and it's a shameful thing, but there it goes. As you see across the middle interior down to southwest and south central, generally clear skies, some fair weather clouds, that's it. Low pressure across the southern Bering and North Pacific, helping to send more cloud cover up to the north. And as that flies into the north slope, that has brought a lot of warmth to places like AKwx once again. Over southeast, generally fair weather. We've got some light areas of rainfall across southern 1/3 of the panhandle, let's say, but the northern Gulf is relatively quiet there as well. Here's the infrared satellite picture, and you can see a lot of that cloud cover is really low, kind of a stratus deck moving off to the south and to the east. Across the north, again, generally clear sky across south central. Out to the west, though, you can see the next weather wave moving into the central and western chain, and you get a little bit better view of that low pressure system as it's moving just south of Alaska. That's creating rain around Cold Bay, False Pass up toward Sand Point, and some of that's making its way up into the west coast of the YK Delta. Most of that, though, really not falling, though, as far as we can tell, more clouds than anything else. High pressure sitting out across Eagle at 1,024 millibars, and it's supported aloft as well by a healthy ridge. Up to the north, though, you can see the effects of colder air marching into the Chukchi coast today, and ahead of that, some stronger winds, showers, some areas of light rain and fog with that, and much warmer weather there for AKwx. As that warm front moves away, colder air is moving in, and the bulk of your warming has now ended. For the north slope there, and colder weather will continue to set in. Once this pressure gradient relaxes, your winds will relax as well, and we think those high surf conditions will ease up as we get into the afternoon, the late afternoon tonight, and early tomorrow morning. Low pressure sitting out across the western Yukon. If we're going to see thunderstorms anywhere on this map today, it's probably going to be across the international line there. This is probably a pretty good mark for separating the more active thunderstorm weather from what really is pretty stable today across most of the central and western parts of the interior. Out across the west, so stable in fact that areas of low clouds and stratus are found. That's under high pressure. That's strengthening at 1,020 millibars tonight. To the south, though, that Pacific weather maker, 1,013 millibars, is enough to slosh up some rain across the eastern chain in the Alaska Peninsula. On the eastern side of that, won't be surprised to see some areas of fog. Some of that could stretch into southwestern Alaska. And if you draw a line from that high pressure system all the way up to the tops of each one of these arches there, that's the ridge of high pressure. Very close to that would be a very good guess to where we'll see some more fog forming again tonight. Showers are found out across the Alaska Range, and we expect to see some scattered activity across parts of southeast tonight. As that front continues to sag southward, it's going to slow down as it hits the Brooks Range, but we expect to see some rainfall moving into places like Nome, Kotzebue, and Shishmaref tonight, and probably westward toward Ambler, and then creeping eastward up toward Arctic Village. Notice, though, it doesn't make a huge impact to Fort Yukon or Fairbanks just yet. And good news, if it was cold for you in Fairbanks last night, chances are it's going to be a lot warmer tonight. You've got two things working in your favor. The moisture in the air is going up, and you're going to have more cloud cover over you, too. So those two things should help keep it from being a frosty night again in the Goldstream Valley. Out across the west, rainfall is working eastward. With that, low pressure at 1,009 millibars will connect with a trough across the western chain. East, we expect some areas of fog across the Bering thanks to high pressure sitting over Norton Sound. Low pressure is still holding just to the west of the Gulf at 1,015 millibars. You can see the ridge of high pressure here across the Gulf, and once again, areas of fog should be found along that. Pretty quiet as we get into Thursday across south central, maybe some fair weather clouds over the higher terrain. The front up to the north is slowly dropping southward, but really not making a whole lot of southward progress by and large. It does get across the Brooks Range, and you may see some light rainfall up around Fort Yukon to Bettles, and then maybe some showers developing across the southern interior. For southeast, some showers lingering across the southern third of Alaska, the peninsula. Areas of fog there around the areas of clouds around the capital city, I should say, but by and large, fair weather. And that should continue as we head into your Friday, with the front starting to fall apart to the north. Showers still lingering around the Brooks Range and points south. A better chance for some showers. Maybe watching for a thunderstorm here across southwest, but a broad southerly flow continues there. That keeps moist air over the Bering Sea and areas of fog there, with showers and drizzle across the chain, and generally dry weather for parts of southeast. And again, still watching the Mendenhall River. Here's a look at temperatures as we get into the overnight hours. 40s and 50s for the interior, southwest and Bristol Bay nearing 50 degrees. Still on the cooler and drier side for south central. 40s and 50s for southeast, and going just above freezing for most on the north slope. Still some 40s though lingering around. Highs in the 60s and 70s for the southern interior, southwest and south central. Southeast in the mid to upper 60s. 30s and 40s up north, cooling back down. 60s for Bristol Bay, 50s for the Chain, and 51 in St. Paul. Overnight lows in the 40s and 50s for the southern interior and southwest for Friday morning. Holding above freezing, but just barely for some of our North Slope communities. 40s and 50s in southeast. Kodiak 50 to start your Friday. Right back to 62 in the afternoon and low to mid 70s for many in the southern interior for Friday.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On the flying weather now, IFR conditions will last across the North Slope, especially across the coastal areas. Inland, you may see a little bit more MVFR to start up your morning. For the Bering Sea, widespread IFR is expected all the way from the Bering Strait down through the Aleutian Chain and across the Pacific coast of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and then stretching into southeast, central and southern southeast especially. Many areas in the interior southwest, just across the Alaska Range up through the upper Yukon and south central will experience VFR all day long. Looks like a great day there. But most of the North Slope will at least have MVFR, with IFR lingering across some of the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, especially very close to Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass. The North Slope coastal areas will likely be dealing with IFR very close to the ice edge. Just south of that, you're probably going to see more MVFR. IFR lasts through the Bering Strait, the Chain, the Alaska Peninsula, same old story. No big change there as we go through your Friday afternoon, but we do expect to see some improvement across central and southern parts of southeast. You'll transition over to more of an MVFR situation there, with northern parts around the Lynn Canal, Chilcoot and White Pass especially, probably looking at improving conditions as we go through your Thursday. And VFR should linger there through your Friday morning. Notice MVFR and mixed areas of IFR across the southern third of the Panhandle. IFR across the Gulf, as well as same old places, Pacific coast of the Alaska Peninsula, the Bering Sea, all the way up through St. Lawrence Island, and a large chunk of the western half of the Seward Peninsula, just south of Shishmaref down toward Nome and out to Wales and Tin City. IFR conditions south of the Brooks Range there, but could affect Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass again, and coastal areas of the North Slope, with some parts of the interior looking at VFR conditions. MVFR creeps its way back in there by the afternoon. IFR lingers offshore. You'll notice around the Noatak and Kobuk Valleys up around Red Dog Mine, IFR there expected to hold. IFR for St. Paul and St. George there, as well as the Pacific coast of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, the Gulf, and most of southeast sees mainly VFR, with MVFR down around the Dixon entrance and Craig Klawak and toward Ketchikan. Let's take a look at your passes then. As you saw, Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass are going to be IFR through most of the daytime tomorrow. Do expect some improvement for Friday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass expecting to see VFR, and all the way around the Horn, things look pretty good. VFR conditions there for Windy Pass, for Isabel Pass, also for Mentasta Pass, looking to be visual flight rule. Tanita Pass looks pretty good. Portage Pass also okay. And Chilcoot and White Pass, a start at marginal conditions, but improvement should spread its way further south as we go through the day. Freezing levels show a big burst of cool weather coming in behind this front that's passing over the North Slope today. A lot of wind coming in ahead of that, and cooler weather coming in behind it there. Levels in the interior, and especially the west, anywhere from 10 to 12,000 feet. You can see a little bubble of cooler weather here across Kodiak Island. To the west, though, that recovers nicely. Levels out across the western chain above 14,000 feet. And we still have a cool pool of air across central and southern parts of southeast, but all of this heat is moving eastward with it. So expect some warmer days coming your way and cooler weather for the North Slope. Icing potential right now is pretty high up there. Isolated moderate areas above 10,000 feet should be expected with this wave that's coming across the North Slope right now. There are other pockets of moisture out across the west, across southwest, and across southeast, but again, most of that is so high up there, it's probably a little concern to you as general aviation. As we look at the north, you can see the jet stream there coming out of eastern Asia, anywhere from 70 to about 90 knots, pretty much due west. We call this a zonal flow, flowing from one zone to the other. West to easterly movement there. And then we move a little bit further south, and you'll notice a very wavy jet stream here. You could probably connect these two streams, and if we did that, we would call this an omega blocking pattern, because as we've talked about many times in the past, that resembles that Greek letter omega, kind of an upside down shaped U with curls at the end here. And this is a very slow to move pattern. It is somewhat progressive in this case, and but it isn't just going to go away or change very quickly. So we expect at least 3-4 days out of something like this, in this case this time. So lows on either end of that blocking high pressure. You can see a little more clearly here at 9,000 feet, low pressure south of the Alaska Peninsula and across southeast, and then a broad zonal flow, that west easterly flow around the interior, 20 to 25 knots. Faster winds on the western side of this, out over the chain, up to 50 knots there. You can see that at 3,000 feet as well. Ridge of high pressure sticking up into the interior with a broad southerly flow coming up the west coast. It's going to push a lot of heat northward. Our westerly flow is strong across the north slope, 30 to 40 knots, and northerlies over southeast, 20 to 25 light winds just about everywhere else. So where's the turbulence out of all this? Below 5,000 feet across the central interior out toward the west, perhaps as far west as Bettles, and as far east as Fort Yukon. Northward, you can see more across the north slope.
It used to be that you could only warn one person about a tornado after it had already blown down someone else's barn.
Now, on average, we're able to issue a tornado warning 15 minutes before the tornado's even there, and that wouldn't be happening without Doppler radar.
This NexRad system has reduced fatalities on the order of 45% due to tornadoes since its advent.
We have a lot more information now about storms and being able to understand how they develop, how they produce severe weather, and how that information might be used to improve warnings for our National Weather Service partners.
The lab is unique in that we serve the nation by supporting the National Weather Service in its mission to protect lives and safe property by improving the accuracy and the lead time of severe weather warnings.
We have a legacy of radar research and converting existing technology from military to weather purposes.
A recycled Doppler radar led to the development of NexRad, installed nationwide in the early 90s. It allowed forecasters to see storms like never before.
Not only did we help bring that technology to the National Weather Service and to help protect lives and property, but we have continued to upgrade that technology, keep it relevant, and keep it state-of-the-art.
Recently, a major upgrade was added. Dual polarization technology takes the radar from 2D to 3D. Forecasters now know more about what type of precipitation is falling, which is very helpful during winter storms, as well as how much rain is accumulating, resulting in better flash flood warnings. The radar can also detect and track tornadoes based on debris. Looking to the future, the National Severe Storms Lab is testing the capabilities of phased array radar. Originally used by the U.S. Navy, the antenna scans the skies electronically rather than mechanically, allowing the radar to focus on a storm.
With current technology, we get a full picture or image of what is going on within a storm every 4 to 5 minutes. So it's more like a snapshot. Whereas with phased array radar, we get that picture of what's going on in the storm every minute. So it becomes more like watching a movie. So we can do adaptive, rapid scanning on the storms that matter most, being able to provide the information that's most relevant when and where it's happening.
Another advantage of phased array radar is its multifunction capability, providing weather and air traffic information simultaneously.
Number one, it is a system that promises to replace and expand upon the existing weather surveillance radars. Secondly, to replace aging air traffic surveillance radars. And number three, it offers a potential application to meet Department of Homeland Security and defense requirements for identifying and tracking non-cooperative aircraft. With the replacement of all these various radars with a single system, the American taxpayer could realize substantial savings in cost.
You have a lot fewer radars to maintain, and the electronic capability of this also reduces maintenance costs because you do not have moving parts.
Not too long ago, the ability to predict severe weather was thought to be impossible. During the past several decades, research conducted at the National Severe Storms Lab has developed life-saving tools like Doppler radar. We've progressed from no warning of threatening weather to about a 15-minute lead time, and current research promises to extend that much further.
Our knowledge of severe storms and how they behave, and our use and ability to use the Doppler radar technology is in a lot of cases a direct result of that close working relationship, that research to operations component that we get between the National Severe Storms Laboratory and a forecast office.
That history and understanding of how these data can be used by our users and doing the research to help advance the use of radar technology, really it's what we live for, it's in our lifeblood, it's in our history.
It's now easier than ever to be a part of weather research. We just launched the mPing app for both iPhone and Android users, and it's totally free. PING, which stands for Precipitation Identification Near the Ground, is a research project by the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab and the University of Oklahoma. With the mobile app, you can send us your weather observations on the go. Are snowflakes falling on your head? Is hail hitting your car? Just select what type of precipitation is falling and press submit. It's that easy. It takes about 5 seconds and it's anonymous. Reports can then be viewed online. Our scientists will compare your report with what the radar has detected. This helps us develop new radar technologies and techniques. Download the app today, share your reports, and let's work together to make our nation weather ready. Learn more here and follow us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And back for your marine forecast, we're going to start with sea surface temperatures there. And one thing to note as we are getting into some of the warmest water temperature part of the year, you can see that temperatures across the eastern Gulf, if I get out of the way of the scale here, you'll notice those are running upwards of 15 to almost 17 C in some cases there in southeast. Pretty warm stuff all the way up into Prince William Sound and parts of the Cook Inlet region. And then once you get into eastern Norton Sound around Shaktoolik, those water temperatures are very, very warm, certainly across the YK coastline as well. Still pretty cool up around the Chukchi, but parts of the upper Kotzebue Sound also looking fairly warm. You can always check this out anytime you want at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice and look for the sea surface temperatures. You'll also find the sea ice image here. And what we note today is there's a little more marginal ice along the Beaufort seacoast. In the coming days, the southwesterly wind that we have now is going to come back around to a west and northwesterly flow, so there is going to be some movement of that. But we are expecting to see some more changes there across the Beaufort seacoast in the coming weeks. So make sure you're staying up to date on the forecast if that matters to you. And again, that website, weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. On to southeast now. You'll notice winds coming in around 10 to 15 knots on the inside, 20 knots across the outer coast, 15 to 20 or so from the west and northwest, with 4 to 5 foot seas in most areas, 6 foot seas outside the Dixon entrance, and small seas on the inside, only 2 to 3 feet. For Friday, look for more of a southerly flow inside of the Lynn Canal, 15 knots and 3 foot seas, light winds, small seas for Stevens Passage down through the Dixon entrance, and that west and northwesterly flow still coming down, picking up a little more speed there, 20 to 25 for your Friday, seas holding around 5 to 8 feet, the highest of which outside of the Dixon entrance. Remember, high pressures parked out here across the Gulf. And on the north and western side, we get a southwesterly flow coming into Cook Inlet, 15 knots and 3 foot seas there, small seas, light winds inside of Prince William Sound, and at west and southwesterly flow coming across the northern Gulf, only 15 knots. Not bad on Thursday, and really not much of a change on Friday. Still looking at about 10 to 15 knots in most areas, 2 to 3 foot seas in Cook Inlet at light southerly breeze. Not too bad if you're heading out there with the big net, and 10 to 15 knots coming in for the northern Gulf, 3 to 4 foot seas on Friday. Bristol Bay is looking at southeasterlies, 15 knots and 3 foot seas for Thursday. Light southerlies coming over Kodiak Island, 15 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas on either side. An east and southeasterly flow a little stronger down the Bering Sea coast and across the Alaska Pacific coastline there, the Alaska Peninsula coastline, 7-foot seas expected with a 20-knot wind. That diminishes a little bit more around Sand Point on Friday, but we'll continue with most areas looking at 15 to 20 knots and 3 to 4 foot seas just about everywhere, with the exception of AKwx out toward Perryville. You're expecting more of a 7-foot sea on Friday. For the Aleutian chain, southwesterly is already building back in around Kiska and Attu, 20 knots with a 7 to 9-foot sea. Across the central and eastern chain, north and northwesterly winds there, and then you can see the effects of high pressure still pushing back toward Unalaska and Nikolsky. Seas holding around 5 to 6 feet, 2 to 4 foot seas across the Bering Sea coast, and by Saturday, west and southwesterly winds building in 15 to 20 knots there. Broad southerly flow coming back up through the central and eastern chain, 2 to 4 foot seas here, and you can see 5 to maybe as low as 4 foot seas, 7 foot seas south of Adak and Atka for your Friday. Not a big change up the west coast, 10 to 15 knots in most areas. You'll see an offshore breeze around the Kuskokwim Delta region, 20 knots with a 3-foot sea. Looking at light winds and small seas around the Pribilofs, 10 knots, maybe as high as 4-foot seas there, 5-foot seas as you get out toward St. Matthew. And once you look at Friday, really not much of a change, but wind speeds are going to pick up just a little bit more, 15 to 20 in all areas. 20 knots north of Makoriak, 4-foot seas expected there, and over some of that warm water we saw in Norton Sound, 10 knots with an offshore flow, and 2-foot seas expected there to wrap up the week. Here's the North Slope now. Westerlies are going to stay up as we go through Thursday. Remember, this is still over the ice, but some coastal areas may be losing a little more ice as this starts to blow in. Across the Chukchi coast, 15 to 20 knots, expecting 4-foot seas blowing offshore around Kivalina, but onshore north of Cape Lisburne as we get up toward Point Hope or Point Lay and Wainwright. Southwesterlies up through the Bering Strait, 15 knots and 4-foot seas. That becomes light as we get into Friday. And southwesterlies remain a little bit more on the breezy or gusty side, 20 to 25 as you go from Point Lay to Barrow. Looking for 3 to 4-foot seas across the Chukchi coastline for your Friday. Recapping tonight's weather, a cold front's blowing in, and you're going to notice a big change from the warm weather that you had there today to the much cooler weather as we get in toward Thursday and Friday. Winds will diminish in all areas there, so the high surf that you have now and the gusty winds on the North Slope today should all be improving as we go forward. Showers are possible across some of the Alaska Range terrain, but most areas are going to stay dry in the southern interior. A few showers in the southern parts of the Panhandle. And stratus and fog continue out in the west with high pressure keeping things pretty dry for southwest, south central, and most of southeast into the weekend.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.